Well, this is a special edition of the Norfolk Knitting School. What I'm going to do, this is a one-off show, and I'm going to cover making a winter scarf A to Z, because it's about that time when if you want to start getting your Christmas gifts together, you want to make a handmade gift, and I think people would just love a scarf. But you want to do a good job. So I'm going to go through everything here. Now, I guess the first thing that I want to mention is the yarn. Before we go into the stitches, and I want to talk to you about that. Now, this is one that I just finished making, and I put this little point on it, and it's essentially ribbing. And but I'm going to hold this out so Christina can see the stitches. Now, all of these stitches are knit and purl, and all knitting is knit and purl. Now, you might twist the stitches, you might drop a stitch, you might knit into 4 or 5 stitches at once, but it's all knit and purl. Now, this I will show before the end. This was just an idea I had to make it a little bit interesting. Now, I haven't pulled in my string yet. I'm going to my strand here. I'll show you how to do that as well. It's very easy. But so I was pretty pleased with the way this came out. Now, as far as yarn goes, now this is the yarn. This is the yarn that I used doubled. And it would have been used. It could have been used single, but I mean it would have taken probably the rest of my life. It would make something very, very lacy and open, which you may or may not want. I would say not. What's a good now? This I picked up at the job lot. It was I'm very low price, and it says superwash merino cashmere, superwash wool. It's going to be a little bit more money, but it means that people can have a wool scarf, a soft wool scarf, and put it in the machine and wash it. And it says cashmere here, but I think it's only, they give you the, let's see, it's a 72% superwash merino wool. Now, merino wool is a better quality of wool. 15% nylon, 13% cashmere. So, when you see it's just like the ingredients on any kind of a label, whether it's cosmetics or food, the largest amount comes first. They didn't mention nylon on this, and it is a very nice, and this is a pretty good weight. Now, where to buy yarn? Well, there's a website called, I believe it's called, well, if you Google Webb's Northampton, Massachusetts, they have a lot of stuff that's marked down there. I think it might also be yarn.com, but you can also Google Aran Weight, that would be R-A-Y-A-N, I think, Aran Weight yarn sale or acrylic sale. Now, the thing about acrylic is a lot of people, it's cheaper than the superwash. Sometimes you can get acrylic with wool. Sometimes you can get acrylic mixed with cotton, which is good, and you can still wash it in the machine. I don't like that much. I don't like working with acrylic that much. I mean, most of it in the United States is not that great of quality, and if it is better quality, it's going to cost a little more money. There's quite a lot of stuff over at Michael's and at AC Moore. Just be careful, because if you're looking for Patton's brand, P-A-T-O-N-S, or Caron, C-A-R-O-N, they're pretty good. Lion brand is not bad. The Nicole brand is a little iffy, in my humble opinion. So you don't want to put a lot of work into something and then have the nap come up, have it get fuzzy as the yarn is worked. If it's not a very good yarn, it will bring up a nap, the little tiny fibers that are on the surface. Okay, now the other thing about your scarf is called hand. And this scarf here has a nice hand to it. So you can see that it's soft. But hand is a way to describe any material, whether it's scratchy, bulky, stiff, very soft, too soft. And it just has to do with the density. So this is pretty good. what I've got here. Now, how do you determine that? Well, I have this, and you don't need to get one of these. This is a complete set of needles, and they're circular needles. And I think this one I've got working on something here. And what you have is all these different connectors, these cables, so that you can make a circular, and you say, well, gee, I'm not making a sweater. Why do I want a circular needle? Well, you work back and forth, which is what I'm doing here on this. So I'll work back and forth, just like straight needles, but you don't stand a chance of losing a needle, having it slip away from you. And with this, with a set like this, now these are not, and there's another set missing here. These are not, they're not cheap, but if you think you want to knit, and you want to, it's worth the investment because you've got all these sizes and all these lengths. And you can make them, you can use them in the round, you can use them back and forth. I mean, I think it's just, there's an inexpensive one I think that's at Michael's. It might be called Denise. It's not wood like this. It does attach, and all of these switch out, so I can reattach. Well, actually, this is for a smaller needle, so this one won't go in there, but these all have their own size. And when I bought this, I did have a little bit of trouble with it. Some of them didn't want to screw in the way they're supposed to do. So I had to send them back because I got it at Amazon, blah, blah, blah. So if you do want to get one of these, I would get it from a store. It might be a little more money, but it will save you the aggravation if there is a problem or if it's catching or something, that you can just go back to the store. Okay. Now, alrighty. And remember, if you have any kind of questions at all, you can always contact me. Usually in the bottom third, you'll see my email address there, and I'd be just delighted to help you or to speak to you. Now, stitches. Now on this one here, okay, you can do garter, which is knit every row, which we'll look at in a minute. It's okay. It's common. It's very, very common. It's not that interesting. But what I've done with this one, and this pattern is in this book, and there's lots of them around, the Stitch Library. This one is over at AC Moore, not cheap. I got it with a 50% off. It was $11. But you have all these stitches. And there are lace stitches, there are embossed, there's cable. And by the way, you would never put a cable stitch on a sweater, on a scarf, unless it's one of the double-sided cables. And I've never made one of those myself because the back of a cable looks pretty awful, and people are not going to always keep a certain side of the scarf out. So when it turns over and you have a cable, it doesn't look so good. But then when you come down here, ribbing stitches, which are good for scarves, and then they get to texture. And here in the front, Gansey. Gansey's a type of sweater that was made on, I think it was on the Gansey Islands for the fishermen, the wives of the fishermen made, and they had a certain pattern that corresponded to the family, so that if the man was found, there was a chance they might be able to identify him by the sweater. So again, this is all knit and purl, and we come over here, knit and purl stitches. And this is the one here. This is the one that I made the scarf with. Christina will zero in on this, the small gingham, reversible. Now, I don't know why this one doesn't say reversible, because this should also be reversible. And so there's all these, and I think, now, again, some of them you have to pay attention. I think this one is very cool. And you say, well, gee, you said not to, it was going to be all knit and purl and no twists and no... This is not, this happens, that curving happens on its own in the way the stitch is constructed. It's very interesting. I haven't made that one yet. And then you can do the basket weave. Here's like a little nicer, but here's the moss stitch, which is great and very easy. And so you've got all of those, and then even show you some over here, if I can just quickly. See, I think this is a nice one, although there's a lot of stockinette in there, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So there's you will not want to do stockinette. And stockinette is the kind of knit that you see on everything. It's this. Stockinette is this. It's knit one row and purl one row. It curls. It not only curls from the bottom up, it curls side to side. Now you're not seeing it here because this is too short. Unless you want a scarf that's going to look like a tube, then go for it and do all stockinette. But garter will lie flat, and so will these kinds of knit and purl stitches. And of course, this here is the that's seed stitch, or sometimes they call seed stitch. This is stockinette here, but you see there's not that much of it. And then this is also seed stitch, and this is reverse stockinette. So let us go along and get started. I'm trying to think. I thought there was something else I wanted to mention, but we mentioned about the cables and the stockinette stitch and so forth. Okay, so I'm going now. If you ever watched the other show, if you wanted to kind of go through those shows, you'd see some of the things I'm going to do now. But this way, I have it all here, in one place for you. All right, so I'm going to cast on, and I've got a couple little things, little samples here. Now there's the seed stitch, and there's the stockinette stitch I showed. So I'm going to put some more little stitches on here. But right now, I'm going to cast on. Now you can knit a cast on. I don't think it looks that great, and I don't think it's that firm, but let me show you what I do first, and then I'll show you the easier way. You can probably, this is called a two-strand or two-tail, T-A-I-L, two-tail cast on. So I've got my two tails. I don't need to make this long. And if you wanted to get, of course you can always, keep looking at this and replay it if you can, or you can get onto YouTube. Will probably show you this cast on. So you take the two strands like this, and okay, you have the two strands and you bring them down, and you've got almost like a heart here. You pick the outside one up here, the inside here. Oh dear, sorry. As I'm kind of turning around. And Christina is on camera. She's very fierce on camera. I could never do this without her. I pick this one up. It comes through, and there's my stitch. So it's on the outside, and this inside, under and through. Now, I've shown people how to do this, and they just think they're never going to get it. It takes a little bit of practice. In fact, sometimes when I do it, I don't know, the synapse isn't there or something's wrong, and I have to wait and think myself, wait a minute, how do you do that? So this, and the outside and the inside and back under. And that is, I think, the best. Now, there's all kinds of other cast-ons. There's a cable cast on. I don't know what that, I've never done it. And there's something where you put a piece of thread in there that you don't need, and then you pull the thread out when you're finished. I've never done that. Okay, so out, the inside, and under here. And I hope this is clear enough. Okay. The easier thing to do is to just knit it on. And this is the knit stitch. Now, some of you may already know how to knit. I was going to go over that anyway with you, but this is the knit stitch. Instead of pulling this off as if I were knitting, I bring this out and I turn it and bring it down. Now, you can see here how nicely this comes in. I think this looks very nice here. And even on the wrong side. The knit, when you knit on, like I'm showing you now, you knit that first row, and the first row is always a little tricky to knit. But when you knit the first row, there's going to be like a thread kind of opening up between the two needles. It's not a big deal, and it does go away. I don't happen to care for it. And I'm going to do some more of these. And this is the knit stitch. What I'm doing here. But I'm not pulling it off. I'm putting it back on. And I have to twist it a little bit to get a relatively nice finish. Now, I don't know if Christina, if I've done enough here, but I think well, this is where I switched over. But I just think this looks much nicer than this. This looks, to me, looks a little rough, but I'll do a little more. Now, some people do something where they're twisting it around, they're looping it around. It's not going to stay. It's going to look messy. So there, I'm just knitting it on. And I mean, this is satisfactory. I just think the other one is better. Okay, so there you see. All right, this is the two-tail, and this is being knit on. I think this looks much nicer, and even, well, in the back, there's the two-tail, and this is being knit on. So, you know, there you have that. Now, I'm going to scoot myself around here and make sure Christina can see me. So, I'm going to start knitting here. And the other thing about circular needles is you don't have these long things hanging down underneath your arm. And for a scarf, you wouldn't need the long, 14-inch needles. But so I'm going to go in here. And, oh my goodness. Okay, oops, okay. Okay, now I'm actually going in the front of the stitch, but my needle goes in the back. And I take it off. Now, if I go in the back of the stitch, that is still knitting, but it makes a twisted stitch. And I think Christina can possibly, I hope, so I'll do another one. In the back of the stitch, you can see how it's twisted. Okay. So I'm going to knit this row across. And then I'm going to show you the purl stitch. And again, you can, there are websites that show this to you, and of course you can always replay this, but we really try to put out a good product here, and something that's, and as I keep saying, Christina is just the best on the camera for this detail work. So I'm in the front of the stitch, but I put my needle in the back. I know it sounds a little crazy. Okay. Now let me do another row of, now I'm going to go back. Now this is what they call reverse stockinette, and this is where you purl. You purl back, and the purl goes in the front, stays in the front. See, this is the reverse of that. Stays in the front, and just comes off. Oh, and speaking of coming off, I didn't put my little screw on here tight enough, evidently. Okay. They actually have a little pin you can use to kind of really tighten it. But, okay. Now you can see this is okay. This is, now you can see even with this cast on, there's a kind of a little looseness that happens. So I'm purling. The way you remember that it's purl, it's their little round bump like a pearl, and off. Okay. All right, there it is. So I've purled back, and what you're going to see on the other side is what is called stockinette, which is really not suitable for a scarf. I mean, it just isn't. So there it is, right in there. Let me do in one more row quickly here so Christina can give you a better view. Now, how much yarn to buy? Well, I have a little system that I use, but the important thing is that you need to look on that label, and you need to look for the number. Sometimes there's a name, but there's always a number of the color. And then sometimes beyond the number of the color is a dye lot. You want to get the same thing for all your skeins. Okay, I'm back knitting now. And don't worry about this. That was where I changed my style of cast on. Now, if you always want to get extra because, you know, I do something extremely stupid as an experienced knitter. I sometimes am kind of lackadaisical about where my skeins go. And then what happens is, I turn around, I have finished the sweater, maybe might have liked to do something else, and then I find a skein. I mean, that is like just about the stupidest thing you can do. So when you get all your skeins, get extra because you want to keep the same color. Now, if you can't, like for example, let me show you right here for a second. Okay, see if Christina can get this. This is color 172. It's called Green Tea. And there's the lot. I don't know if Christina can get that. You got it? Oh, great. Okay. Now, let's say you can't get as many of these skeins as you want. Okay? What you can do when you're knitting, and whether it's a sweater, whatever it is, if you have 2 skeins of different colors, you can work with 2 skeins. So in other words, now say I have this skein. I'm going to go back through here. I'm going to purl back. Because that will blend the colors. Because usually the dye lot differences are not that significant. But if they butt up against each other, you can see them. And it looks bad. But when you're using 2, and I'm going to show you in a second, when you're using 2 skeins, then it blends right in. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to pick up that yarn. Okay, because I've got to go over here, and I'm just going to start this. Now, I mean, obviously these are different colors, but you just go right along, and you're going to knit. You just start this here, and you knit right across. And when you get to the other side, you'll go back. So you'll just pull this right in, and you know, yes, it's a little loose, a little tricky, and hopefully you won't ever have to do that. But that is what you would do. You would work that other skein right in. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you, because I think the first thing I'm going to show you is ribbing. Now, this is about the easiest thing you can do. You're going to be knitting and purling on the same row. So I'm going to make a wide rib. So I'm going to knit 4, and I'm going to bring my yarn forward, because it's got to be forward. That's what a lot of new knitters don't bring the yarn forward. So they're over here, and then they try to do this, and that's what they get. So try to remember, it goes yarn forward. I'm going to purl 4, and I'm going to continue this for a few more rows. And you know, I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to finish up with this, and I will be right back. I'm going to do a little more of this off camera, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and this is what I've got. This is a 4x4 rib, and actually there's 3 over here, so don't worry about that because I didn't I didn't cast on planning for I should have cast on another stitch, but that's not a big. So that's a 4x4 rib, okay? Now, let's say I want to branch out a little bit. All right, so this would be reversible. Okay, so I'm going to mix this up a little bit, and I'm going to do, okay, so I'm going to do my reverse stockinette here, which is purling. I'm going to go across. Yeah, don't worry about these 3 stitches. Okay, and so now I'm on the right side of stockinette, or what they call the right. I mean, some people make sweaters that look like this, you know. Now what I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to do this stitch. I'm going to do this stitch in between as part of the ribbing. So, see what that looks like. Okay, so now I'm on a purl stitch. I'm going to knit on top of a purl. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to knit 1, purl 1. You're not going to see anything yet. Okay, knit 4 here. Okay, and now I'm doing the seed stitch, which is going to be more visible when we do the next row. And this is just to make something look a little different. Okay, so now you can see here, I've got, okay, so let me just go ahead and knit across and then you'll see it. Now the other thing I could have done, let me just stop for a second. The other thing I could have done is I could have reversed the whole section and made a checkerboard. I could reverse the whole section and make a checkerboard. So I would purl across here on this side and knit across here on the other side. But we'll just continue with this before we get too far afield. Okay, so now, and then you say, well, gee, how do I know where I am? How do I know which is knit? The knit is going to look like a V, and the purl is a little purl. It's a little ball. So now I'm going to purl on top of a knit, and knit on top of a purl. There's my knit stitch. I'm going to purl on top of it. Here comes the purl stitch. I'm going to knit. And I'm going to leave this the same because I'm making a ribbing. So I'm purling across. That's the back of the stockinette, what I just did. Okay, now I'm going to purl over a knit and knit over a purl. I'm now doing the seed stitch. Back to reverse stockinette, which is purling. Oop. And I'm going to purl over my knit and knit. Oh, actually, you know what I did? I think I just left this. I just left this because these were the extra. As a matter of fact, let's just get rid of them. Let's just get rid of them right now, and that will save us any further. Okay. Okay. So now you see what's coming in here. Oops, sorry. Oops, I'm getting caught on my. Okay, so I'll do another row. And I'm just gonna knit this stitch. I should have put 16 stitches on it. Okay. Okay. Now I'm knitting. And now I'm going to seed stitch. I see a purl. There's the purl. I'm going to knit. Here's the knit. There's the little V. I'm going to purl. It makes a very nice stitch. Now, it's going to be a little more work than just doing garter. Garter is knit all the way through. And if you want to make a scarf that you can work on while you're watching TV, you know, go ahead and do the garter stitch. You know, but I think you can do something much nicer that you will really be proud of, and it's not that much harder. It really is not, okay? There's my purl. I'm going to knit over top of it. And there I am here, okay? And now, so now you see, excuse me, now you see here, instead of these purls, I've got the seed stitch here. And if you look at this one, you can see it here. Now I started this with the seed stitch. Okay, then I did just what I was just showing you. Knit, seed stitch, which kind of looks nice because it kind of comes up here. Knit, seed stitch, knit, seed stitch, knit, seed stitch, knit. Okay? On the back side, seed stitch looks the same on both sides. But now here, I'm purling, and where I purled, it shows knit on this side, purl, knit, purl. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Excuse me, I got that wrong. See, I'm sorry, I'm dropped down. All right, start over. Okay, this is the purl. Then here's the seed again. Here's the purl. It's kind of a little askew here. There's the seed, purl, seed, purl, seed, purl. And I'm going to show you what to do with these strings too. Okay. Now, if you want, now let's say I'm going to continue with this for a little while. So let me just grab something over here. Okay, this was all I could find at home for the moment. I had something else, but I couldn't find it. This is a thinner piece of yarn, and this is what you can do to make your, now, okay, let's go back to the garter again. Let's pick that story up again. If you want to do garter, there are all kinds of yarns that are very interesting. And so when you do the garter stitch, which is the simplest of all, you will have the interest from the yarn. You can kind of let the yarn speak for itself. What's really a lot of fun is the yarns that come in, the colors come in sections. So when you knit, you're getting this pattern that opens that you don't know what's going to come. After a while, you'll see the pattern emerge. But there'll be blue, then it'll go to red, and then it'll go green, and green will come over the red, and so forth and so on. And it makes little sections of color, and that's a great look. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to say, well, I'd like to make this yarn, I'd like to make this scarf a little heavier, and I'm going to knit in this color. Now, what I recommend is they actually have yarns that are really, really thin. And sometimes they have little pieces of metallic. They might have a little nub. There's an incredible variety of things that you can put in with your plain yarn. So, I'm here. This is my seed stitch, so that means I'm going to purl. So I'm going to pick this up. Kind of hold it, and you can even do this making stripes. You can knit in a color and then go back to this. So this looks a little awkward here, but okay, there we go. All right, you just have to get that first one started, okay, and kind of tug it to make it tight, and tighten it up. Okay, now I've got a purl, I'm going to knit, and I've got a knit, I'm going to purl over that. That's my seed stitch for this particular rib I'm doing. A purl, I'm going to knit. Okay, here's the back of my stockinette. I'm going to go right across with purl. Okay, knit, I'm going to purl over it because that's the stitch I'm doing. Now you do have the issue, you have to kind of constantly keep the threads, okay, purl again, I hope my hands aren't too much in the way here. I think I'm okay. Oh, good. All right, and we're just going to knit this little oddball back here. Okay. Okay. Now here's the thing too about, I guess I didn't really talk about this before. I should talk about it now. I have doubled the width of the yarn, which means that I'm going to have, the thicker the yarn, the fewer the stitches per inch. Now, it's not a big deal with a scarf. You might want to control and say, well, I want it 18 inches wide, I only want it 12 inches wide. But my little tool that I use here, and you could really just use it, for a scarf you can just use a regular ruler. So I'm going to look here, and I'm going to put this right here. Okay, and I'm going to see how many stitches to the inch. So I got 1, 2, let me do it this way. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5's to the inch. So that if I want to make a scarf 12 inches wide at this gauge, I would put on 60 stitches. If I'm using a heavier yarn, I'm going to have fewer stitches to the inch. And again, it's not really a big deal you're not fitting a scarf, but it's a very big deal when you make a sweater. So let's just take a look at this again. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, and I told people with there were 18 Norfolk Knitting School episodes, and I always told, hang on, oh no, wait a minute, hang on. Oh no, I was doing the wrong thing. Sorry. Now I'm knitting. And nobody ever contacted me, so that's good. I mean, but do feel free to email me if you have any. Okay, now I've got a purl. I'm going to knit, and you see how this comes in. It looks pretty nice. And if you can get yourself one of those, now what you want to do is you can look for yarn online, but of course you can't actually pick it up and feel it like you can if you're in the store. If you go to a yarn store, just go in and ask them if they have anything on clearance or on sale. Just say, because that would be your best value. You may get an inexpensive yarn for the body of this, which would represent the white, and you might want to put something a little more expensive in for the accent, which is what I've done here with the red and white. So there it is there. I'll do one more here, but you can see it coming in. And if I just couldn't find, I had something thinner before. I don't know what, oh, here you can see it a little bit better maybe in the back here. So there's my seed. There's the reverse stockinette, which is purling, reverse stockinette, and seed. I'm going to just do one more. And then I'm going to show you about taking in those little strings. Okay, so there's my original strings. Don't worry about that. You can get that. You can put that in. You just have to, when it's two color like this, you do, okay, there's a purl. I'm going to knit. A knit, I'm going to purl. I'm doing the seed stitch. A purl, I'm going to knit over it. I'm back to purling. That's the reverse side. There's the other side. Here I am here, purling. And I've got a knit, doing my seed stitch. Now you use a slightly bit of more yarn when you're doing that seed stitch. I guess it's just the wrapping, where you're going back and forth, and there I'm purling. Okay. Now if I continued on with this, you would see that this is, there's going to be fewer, well, maybe we can see it. Let's see if we can see it. Let's see if we can see it. So I just want to be sure that you see this. If you remember before, we were looking at this, and our gauge with just the white yarn was 5 to the inch, and now it's 4 because the yarn is twice as thick because I have 2 strands. Okay. I want to talk about the quantity of yarn. Now, this is a swatch, and this is in Stockinette. There you can see it, Stockinette. You should do the swatch in whatever pattern stitch you're going to do your scarf in. Whatever it is. Okay, ribbing, seed stitch, some of these other things. And then you measure the swatch, and you can just take it, yeah, I'm going to take this right off. Because usually when you measure a swatch, now making the swatch is really important with a sweater because you, as I showed you, you can end up with a size too small, too big, and it's just really, okay. Okay, so I've got this. So I'm going to measure this. Now I'm holding this up, so I might not get this exactly, but if you were doing it at home, you'd do it on the table. So I got 3.5 by 1 3/4. Whatever it is, you can plan on making it 2 by 4. If you get the area of a 2 by 4 swatch, and then you consider, now I want to make a scarf that's, let's say, 18 inches wide by 60 inches long. You multiply the 18 by 60, you get the total number of square inches in the finished scarf. You go back to your swatch, you multiply, I think, what do we say, 1 3/4 by 3.5. And then you say, well, how many times? It's better if you have even numbers, obviously. If you're not doing all these extra, little fractions and all, obviously. And then you say, okay, how many times does this piece go into the total number of square inches in the scarf? So we just divide this number of square inches into the total square inches. Then you take this out, you measure it, and then you go and you say, okay, this went into the big scarf X number of times. This is all the yarn that was in my swatch. And so I measure this and I multiply it by the same number of times the swatch went into the whole scarf. And that will tell you pretty closely how much you need. I mean, if you don't want to be, buying extra skeins and having the money, whatever, and then having to take them back, keep the receipt, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, all right, let me show you. Okay, you might be interested. Okay, let me do this first while we make sure we have time for this. Okay, so I've got this thing hanging down here. And another thing you can do when you do make your scarf is there's all kinds of little things that they sell, little doodads and things that they sell at A.C. Moore and Michael's and a lot of these places that you can then, put on the end of a scarf. Now, I'm going to give this to a man, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. But I could see, maybe here, putting 2 little buttons, same on both sides, and maybe something down here, or a few crystals that you can just, because the crystals are cones, the thread goes right through, you just need a small enough needle, and just stitch them right on there. You could put a row of crystals going down the end. All right, I'm going to show you how to get rid of this. And I mean, people would just, go absolutely crazy, I think, to get a handmade scarf. All right, so I'm going to put this in here. This is my crochet hook. And in this case, I've got a point, and I'm just going to go in here like this, and under another one, and I'm just sort of doing this at random. I pick this up, and I pull this down. Now, I'm not crazy about the way that looks, so I'm going to put them closer together. I'm going to get all those things closer together because I don't care for the way that looks. So let's go back. And I mean, I suppose let's see about going through this way. Let's try this. I'm going under the purl stitches. Take it around. Oops. Take this down. And I don't know, you may not like the way that looks either, but you can't very well just cut it off short. Now, sometimes when you're working with a skein of yarn, you will see a knot in the skein. If it's a cheaper skein of yarn, that's usually what tends to happen. And they, but that's about the best you can do unless, let's try one more thing here. Let's see if we kind of don't do it in a straight line. Let's try that. Get this guy out here. Okay. Let's just see if I were to do the following. Let's see, if I go under here, let's see, I go over here and just kind of zigzag up through there. Let's go over here. Let me go over here. Let me go in here. Okay, and let's do one more, like that. Let's see how that looks. Usually you want to do this along the edge of the scarf, but I think it all, oops, let me go back. Let's see where we're going here with this. I'm picking up some other stitches. So if this happens to you, don't say, oh, I'm a terrible knitter. I mean, this is, you see, I mean, this is, all right, now let's see, we can pull this out and see. Okay, that I think is less visible. And then I would just cut it right here. I might do a little more and I would just cut it right here. Okay? And I don't think that's very visible at all. That's not bad. Okay. So now, okay, let me pick these stitches up, and I'm going to show you how to make that point. There was an episode in the knitting school in the original show where I did this. But let me show you right now, because I think it makes it look really nice. It's different, it's your work, and it's something that is going to be unique. Okay, let's see, we go here. I'm just going to pick these up. And, oh, here's another point. When you pick up stitches, like I'm doing here, you're going to find that when you go back to knit, that those stitches are going to feel, and you're going to sense that they're a little bit twisted. So let's just look at that now. Okay, going back. All righty. Oh, I don't know why that's tight, but okay. Oh, here's another point. If you have to take your stitches off and you want to pick them back up, you want to make it easy on yourself, use a smaller needle. 1 or 2 sizes small. It will go right through, it'll go right through the stitches. And it won't matter when you're going back and knit with your regular size needle. You won't see anything. So I'm going to scoot this guy down. All right, so now I'm going to go back and knit, and I can see that these are a little bit twisted, and I don't want that to show. So I'm going to straighten them out as I go back. I'm going to straighten them. I don't know if there's a way to avoid doing this when you pick them back up. I mean, my concern is to get them back up, get them back on a needle as fast as I can. Okay. All right. Now, actually, I think I could just, well, let me show you this way. I was going to do a shortcut, but let's just do it the old-fashioned way here and straighten them out as we go. Now, once you make one of these, you know, you can, and you know, if, you know, sometimes the men's wear, although it seems like now in men's fashion they wear the longer scarves like the women do, but some men just want it to go around their neck and across their chest. Now see, this one is straight. So for some reason, this guy came out straight. So I'm just going to knit him. This one has to be, so there's probably a way, this is a straight one. Okay, now how do I make the little point? Okay, very, very simple. I just bind off, and of course eventually you'll have to bind off your scarf. And binding off is just this. And take the second one, or the first one, over the second, and now you have a bind off stitch. Now here I'm going to, well, I'm doing purl here, so I just go across, and at the beginning of every row, I'm going to do one bind off, and eventually it will come out to a point, which is, you know, of course makes sense. Now, there was another little thing I should tell you. When you're knitting that scarf, there's a way you can make a little selvage edge. And I think I have time to show you that. Okay, now I'm starting again here. Okay, so I did a bind off, little step. I'm going to do another one here. I mean, I just got my, you know, my spare yarn here, so I knit two, take this one over the front, and knit back across. And as you do that, it makes a little step, which is what you see here. And of course, it's looking very different because of the way this yarn is. But you see the little steps. Actually, they're not as visible because this is a very soft yarn, so they all are kind of, but there they are. Each time I went across and I bound off a stitch. So you can see them right there going up both sides. Now, let me just knit across here, and I want to show you one last thing. So it makes a nice selvage edge. Now, a selvage is when they manufacture fabric to keep an edge that won't ravel at the edge of the length of fabric. They, I may have to knot this on. They have a little finishing that they do with the machine, and it's a little edge that looks a little tighter than the rest of the weave in the fabric. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to quickly knot this and just show you this one last thing. I'm going to knot this because I cut it. I mean, I wouldn't have cut it normally, but my demonstration. Okay, all right. Okay, so when you start a new row, this makes a selvage edge. You purl, you slip at what they call slip as if to purl. Now we happen to be purling on this side anyway, so I'm going to quickly purl across. And when you slip as if to purl at the beginning of every stitch, it makes this sort of nice looking V, this kind of a flat V along the edge. And it looks very nice. It's very finished. And actually, I didn't do it on this one here. It didn't even occur to me, but I just thought now that I probably should show this to you, because in a lot of patterns, you will see them tell you slip as the first stitch as if to purl. So now I'm going to be on my knit side. I'm going to slip as if to purl. I don't know if you can see this over here. You see how it makes, this looks a little big here, but it makes this V on the edge. So I'm going to slip as if to purl, and there it is, slip as if to purl, pull it off, do not knit it, come back around for your knitting and knit across. And that will, I don't know if you can really see it. You can't really, I don't know if we have enough time to do another row so you can see it. We can certainly go back and do a few stitches on the other side, and you should be able to see the little selvage come in. So I'm just quickly knitting this across. Alrighty, okay. Now I'm on the back. But again, of course, you're not going to be using stockinette on your scarf. Anyway, so slip as if to purl. I don't know if you can see how this is coming out. I'm going to do this, my last little thing to do. Slip as if to purl. And I'm purling on this side. Anyway, I don't knit it. I go and knit this one. But it got knitted, the one I slipped got knitted on the end. So again, I'm sorry you can't really see this, but try it, you know. So I hope you've learned something. I'm hoping I've covered everything that you might possibly want to know. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Good luck, and I hope you make a lot of scarves and you will delight people with them. And lastly, I want to thank Christina Gleason. She was fierce on the camera. Jen is in the control booth. And I'm Marie Battistone. I didn't think I mentioned my name in the beginning. I'm Marie Battistone, and happy Halloween.